Hello again, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to another episode. It's James here. Today I'm on a video. If you're listening to this through your headphones, a video exists. We're doing video. So today I spoke to Anande Bergman. He's the Chief Officer for Growth at Viktor AI, which is a platform that's simplifying the app creation process for engineers around the world. I reached out to Anand to talk about Viktor and its features because I'm always looking for new tools that benefit the wider engineering community. And as usual, no commercial arrangement here. This is just about sharing knowledge and exploring possibilities. So, Viktor is a very interesting tool that integrates with Python and Excel and a variety of other commercial engineering softwares. And it allows engineers to build applications for themselves, their teams, and their clients in a much more intuitive process that abstracts away a lot of the heavy lifting involved in basic software development. So Anand is going to share a lot about how Viktor does this, its extensive documentation, and some examples to show engineers just how they can tackle all these different types of problems in new ways. So if you're interested in automating tasks or making your work interactive or even just creating tools for yourself, then this is a good episode for you. So it was a great chat with a very nice guy. Thanks everybody for listening. We're up to 100 countries. Now on with the episode. Bye-bye. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today I'm thrilled to host Anande Bergman from Viktor AI, which is a fascinating platform that provides a lot of different tools and efficiencies for engineers, and we're going to dig into those soon. So, Anand, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So, to kick things off, Anand, can you give us a quick background on your own engineering journey before we dig into Viktor?
Yeah, sure. So I was educated as a aerospace engineer in structural engineering side. But I didn't really work in that industry because I had the feeling those processes take way too long in the offshore in the aerospace industry. So if you look at the plane, it takes really 10, 15 years to get to production. So I went into the offshore industry, also to calculate structures, in this case steel and very heavy, so that's the difference. And I also was part of two production companies, so a bridge building company and a flange building company bought in glass fiber. So I also did some experience in really manufacturing production. I think it's a really nice part of it, not combining like the theory with really how things are used and applied. And if you know both, you're a better engineer too. And yeah, after that, we founded a software company with some friends, and that's Viktor.
Cool. And so we talked briefly about your introduction to Python through MATLAB and then Excel and then finally Python. So can you just briefly outline that for people?
So I learned MATLAB at the university, and we did all kind of like advanced optimizations on structures. And then when I started working in the offshore industry, at least that company didn't have a MATLAB license. So yeah, like I think 99% of all engineers, they start building tools in Excel. And it was okay. So you could do quite some stuff like pre-processing, post-processing of your models. But at a certain point that was not enough. And I started seeing, okay, how can I do more in Excel? And I think I took like really a decision I regret, and that was learning VBA. And that's like the way of programming inside Excel. Luckily now they also allow to use Python inside Excel. So that's a good move. Good move, Excel.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like quite annoying. It was not very easy. It's a difficult language to understand and to get it running. Excel sheets has also all kind of problems when you try to share them and work together. There's not like database on it. So then I said, okay, I want to kind of go back to MATLAB. So what's the alternative for it? And started looking, and I found Python. That was already, I think, 7 years ago. And there I started practicing in Python. Actually, that conversion from MATLAB to Python was not that difficult. It was kind of in the same way, same logic, like different language, but same logic. And from there, we went on and started automating all kind of processes. And we have been doing there for almost a decade.
That's my experience is very similar. And the progression of Excel to VBA is a very, very common path for engineers. And VBA is incredibly difficult to work in. It's, you know,
Very well. Yeah.
a normal Excel calculation, the formulas become ridiculous when you're trying to track cells and how everything works. But it becomes 10x more difficult when you're trying to do that in VBA. It's And I remember wrestling with it and thinking that I was making tremendous progress, spending so much time trying to debug and write these VBA scripts. And when I look back at all that time and like all that energy spent, if I just stopped and started using Python back then,
Yeah.
I would be a lot further on. And I think I think a lot of people don't even realize that there's an easier way. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, we could talk about that for a long time. Let's talk about Viktor. What is Viktor? What's it about in your own words?
Yeah. So what is it about? It's in T-shirt. It says automate the boring, engineer the awesome. That's where we stand for. And we're a platform in which like engineers, like civil engineers or structural engineers, of geotechnical engineers, all kind of like classic engineering disciplines can automate their workflows. And they can do it in a way that's easy, but also in a way that the tools they make are user friendly. So we enable them to make web applications so that they can share that with other people in their team. And they can really kind of create professional tools that can have a bigger impact in their organization and for their own like and next to that we have like the whole system to share those tools inside your company or outside your company. So it's like an internal app store, which I could show later, where you can have all those apps and work with them.
So I guess just to provide a bit more clarity and context, when you say web apps, you really mean um, a custom tool that has user inputs that will provide a specific output. It could be the result of a calculation. It could be a visualization of data. It could be a combination of those things. It could be connected to a 3D model or some other commercial software. So there's huge flexibility in when you say web apps, you really mean any type of tool.
Yeah, yeah. So I always say that we provide like a box of digital building blocks. It's like digital Lego, and we
Yeah.
have all kind of components that enable you to create those apps very quickly. So you don't need to be like software engineer. You just yeah can make those apps with no code at the moment, and then you can, if you want to make more advanced apps, you can do that with Python. But it's like basic Python, like what an engineer could do. And we have all kind of like pre-made components that you can utilize to build those apps quite quickly. So all kind of different input fields, also like all kinds of visualizations. You can show stuff in maps, create 3D models, automatic reporting. So kind of all the building blocks you need to automate that. And we enable you to connect with like software you typically use in engineering. So for example, if you do a structural calculation in ETABS of CSI of any kind of program, we provide you with the tools to connect that app to that software, so you can run it in the background, do optimizations, and the people using that web app don't need to have that software installed, so they have everything through a very clean and easy web interface without needing to have any knowledge about coding.
So you brought up a good point there. For any engineers out there that are familiar with app development or building these types of tools, having pre-made components is a huge time saver. And the Victor documentation is robust. There is a lot of information on there and a lot of helpful tutorials and guides that explain how these different components fit together. But if you've ever wrestled with trying to get a slider in the right position on a page or a text box to correctly link to your calculations, it can you can end up pulling out some of your hair. So to have all of this stuff pre-made and available like a building block, as you mentioned, is a big time saver. I do have a couple of questions though.
Yeah.
Let's say I build an app for a simple steel beam design, and I set it up so that my users just put in, let's say, a length, a couple of different point loads, a UDL, whatever.
Yeah.
Can you, so if you're putting in those inputs right in the web app, can you actually see the code? Can you see what my calculations are? Is it transparent in that sense, or are the calculations hidden?
So the calculations, let's say the code of the app, it's hidden. I think a lot of companies prefer it like that because they want to keep control on actually the quality of the tool. So then don't want people just to mingle around and start modifying stuff.
Yeah.
But yes, I think what happens then is that people have the concern about, hey, what is this thing doing? Not like this black box effect.
Sure.
And what we always recommend is to give their transparency in the sense that you can, not by showing the code, but by, for example, let's say the beam calculation, explain how that beam calculation is done, add all the information to a report, which you can download like a typical engineering report, which is also something you get and you don't get the code, but you are able to check basically, doesn't match.
So you're saying you essentially create like a README file for your app that clarifies what's going on, how the app works.
That's one way. So have a README file, but you can also like what's typical in engineering is that you do a calculation and you report that, not and that you share it with someone else that needs to check it. You can generate that report also automatically based on your own templates. So you can build your template, say, hey, this is the things I want to show, and then the app will generate that report automatically for you, and you can download it and check it. And for example, sometimes when the app interacts with finite element models like in ETABS, then it's also possible to allow the user to download that model so they can everything gets generated automatically. You get the optimal result, and then you can download the model to basically verify that it's really the thing you believe it should be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So, okay, I think we've covered, briefly what it is, and we'll dive back into some of the details later. But I want to rewind to when Viktor was an idea and when things were just getting started. Like, what was the original concept? What was the first idea, and how has it evolved since then to what it is now?
Yeah, it's quite a long story because we started as a group, not doing Viktor, doing something else. So that was
how it is. That's how it goes, right?
Yeah. So we actually started as an engineering services company, and as a bridge building company, and as a flange building company, all with the same group of people. And we built up quite some experience in doing that. And by nature, I think, because a lot of the founders are also like from aerospace engineering, like the original group, we had the tendency to try to automate everything because we were handy with those tools. So we started automating for ourselves. And at a certain point, we really noticed that we could make the difference in comparison with other companies and due to automation. So in the offshore industry, for example, there was like a big project. You had a lot of steel connections, and they make these vessels to have a lifespan of 25 years. And after 25 years, they don't want to throw the whole vessel in the garbage, but they have to check all the welds on fatigue. That's so tedious. You have to check each weld. There are like thousands of those welds in the whole thing. And that's a very good application for automation. So we started automating that process, and that was like our first big automation project in which we had to do reports at the end. And that started evolving slowly also in the production company. When we sold it, we noticed that the new owner wanted to have like this automated. They didn't have an engineering company, let alone an engineering company that could do glass fiber bridges. So we had to like improve the tools we had to make them user friendly, so that also people of sales and production could really do those calculations and have the production drawings and everything they needed. And there kind of we start thinking, hey, like this automation things, it seems there is a future for us here in automation, not? And we start offering that as a service. automating stuff.
Yeah.
And then we start creating web applications because we saw a lot of future there, because it's very user friendly, so it enables people to use it. You can log in everywhere, and we start doing this slowly. And then at a certain moment, a few of our big clients said like, "Hey, we really like the things you make, but actually we want to make it. So is there a way we can to make the tools you make?" And of course, we had a whole set of tools at that moment already to make those web applications. And then we started thinking, okay, should we do this? Should we do that? And then we say, okay, why not? Let's do that. And we started a pilot product where we basically gave all our tools to our clients so they could build web applications. And I think that's like the beginning of what Viktor is now, really a product for making your own tools. And that was already 6 years ago. So of course we have evolved a lot in what it is, and we have made it easier and more robust and added a lot of possibilities to it.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and so often these these kinds of tools come from a personal necessity at the beginning, where it's like you guys needed this, so you built it, and then suddenly there's broad reaching applications for almost anyone. One thing that I really like about just the simplicity of the concept is that the left side of your screen is all of your parameterization controls, where all of your inputs and information, I guess, is on the left. And then on the right, you have your views, and you have all of your different, could be 3D models or plots or whatever.
It's maybe an idea to show this to people, because we're talking about it, and you can imagine that if you listen to the podcast, it may be like be confusing, at least to say, hey, what are they talking about?
Do it.
Yeah? Great. So after logging in, in Viktor, you get this environment. In this case, it's demo, because it's our own demo environment. And what you see here is a collection of tools that your colleagues made for you. So these are tools made by your company for your company in most cases. So we work with the biggest engineering firms in the world, Jacobs, KBR, and they use this to create their own tools. And enter one of those tools. For example, this is a creator, and this is like an app, and you have many of those in your environment. As you see, you have on the left side, some description. You can add images, whatever, add all kind of input fields. And in this case, I have something to draw in a map. And here the function of this is you basically say, I want to draw something in the map. And you position like a building on it, like a simple building. And then you have like, based on that, you create a 3D model. And in this app, then you have all kind of parameters that define like the steel structure of it. We don't have to go through it, but you can basically select all kind of profiles and how much columns you want. And then you get like the structure of this. And you could change it. Let's say, hey, I want to add an initial. And the next logical step, which is not included in this example app, is that you will connect this with some structural software or some Python script or some Excel sheet that does the calculation for you and optimizes the profiles. And of course, then you get like a downloaded report, for example. So that's a typical app.
That's very nice. I'm curious, and obviously we could talk about this single app for a long time, but this frame here, how is this created? Is this something that's like a template that's programmed into your script based on the shape of the buildings that the inputs, or how does that work?
So the right side, you mean, like the geometry?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, but there are different options. In this case, you use Python, and inside Viktor you have like a drawing module, and using like basically you in a line of code, you say, I want a beam, I want to repeat those beams. So you kind of draw this using Python commands.
Yeah.
And it is, of course, linked to the input you have here and the input you have here. So if I will change the profile, it will update. But it could also come from Grasshopper. It could be a Revit model. It could be, many different software to generate 3D models. And in this case, I just choose to do it in that way.
Yeah, very powerful, especially with, sequences, pages, steps. The possibilities are endless. So when we talked about the left being sort of your parametrization and the right being your visualization, this is kind of a perfect example of that. And as you can imagine, this extends to almost any type of visualizations, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's the same concept. So we have like a defined way of making apps. So if I will go to another app, you will see like the same basic layout. So at the left side, you have the input. At the right side, you have some kind of result, which could be a 3D model, a map, a report, graphs, tables, you name it. And because we kind of set everything in a, let's say, template of in a certain layout, it's also very easy to do that, because otherwise, as you said, you spend a lot of time defining where you want to put the things. And because we have it like predefined for you, you can build it extremely quick. So for example, adding this thing is a single line of code. Adding this is a single line of code. Adding a tab is a single line of code. So in that sense, it is super quick to build those apps. And it's also good for users, because, for example, if you go to like a big company, they have maybe 80 of those apps, and having like a predefined layout for those apps, which is quite flexible, it makes them familiar. So when you enter an app and then you enter another, you kind of already know how it works, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, it does. I call that cognitive overhead. It's like a
Yeah.
bill that you have to pay every time you open something up. You have to reorient yourself and go, okay, where am I? Where is everything? So yeah, familiarity is good in that sense.
Yeah. And what I think it's nice that I didn't mention is that we also see ourselves as a place to learn, So I can imagine some people say, hey, Python, maybe I'm not that handy. We have tools to help you to go from basically not coding. So we have a configurator that helps you build those apps without coding. We have tools to help you turn your Excel sheet into an app, all that kind of stuff. We have also like an AI assistant where you can say, hey, make an app which shows 3 boxes in a circle, just to give an example, and it will generate the code for you. And we also have a lot of learning material in the platform itself, and we'll expand this. So we're very committed to make it also like a learning platform. So really, you don't need to be afraid of you starting. Just give it a try, and we have everything for you to really make apps, but also ramp up your skills in automating processes.
Anand, that is the biggest barrier in professional engineering is for people to find the time to learn. And it's a huge problem, and some of the larger companies can afford to give staff specific training and allocate time to learn these new tools because it's a huge investment and it makes a lot of sense. But for smaller companies or countries and parts of the world where it's so competitive that you just don't have that sort of freedom. And that's something that I've encountered a lot with a lot of the listeners for this podcast and for the Flocode newsletter, is that people are keen to learn and they want to learn Python, but they're like, how the hell am I supposed to find the time to do this? Because when you begin, it's overwhelming and it's weird. It's different than a lot of other skills that you're used to. And if you're an experienced engineer, you're already efficient in how you do things, and it sucks to go back and do something and be like, man, I suck at this. And I mean, we all have to do it, but that's a big problem. What do you have to say about that?
First of all, I recognize this. So the whole industry is it's based to be billable. So people are supposed to be billable and work on projects.
Yeah.
So I think there is like a joint responsibility. So at one side, I think project managers should leave time in project budget to develop tools, because at the end it will give you a lot of flexibility to adapt to changes. So typical engineering is that last time minute changes, panic, bad designs. And when you invest at front to make those tools, then yeah, of course you have the flexibility to basically change in a click of a button and get a new design. So you're always ready. And I think we see that project managers are also understanding that. So even in tendering phases, they are incorporated some budget for that.
Yeah.
At the other side, I think it's good to have a tool that helps you in that process, not so that doesn't throw you in the depth immediately, but that enables you to go through like a natural learning process. So, for example, in our case, that you can first use apps, then you can create apps without coding, and then you have all kind of systems to help you. And then for advanced use, yes, you need to learn coding, but you can get used to it slowly. Um, and because we're a product that enables you to make apps quite quickly, then you can also uh, get value of that investment. So the time you spend and recover that in the project itself. And I think that that's key, that you can recover that in the projects, because that's the reality, no? So we will all like that that's not the case, that we'll have more time for innovation. But yeah, the reality check is we have to be beatable, we have to deliver projects, we have deadlines. So I
Yeah.
think that the natural way of learning is trying to improve during your projects for your projects, and start there. So if you have something in Excel that it's not like really working the way you want, learn some Python, try to change some stuff, build a small app, and then take a very ambitious project at the beginning. Start with very simple stuff, and you will start practicing, evolving, and you will come there. A lot
Yeah.
of people have come there. You
Yeah.
can do it too.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I remember one of the first things that I did was when I was out doing structural inspections, taking photographs, and I had, hundreds of photographs, come back to the office and write a script to rename and organize all of the photographs based on, the geotags or the time and date. And I just remember doing it in a matter of minutes and saving myself a bunch of, you know,
So
headaches
much
and
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
so much time. And then like the next day I could do it, made a small change, and it's just a very simple thing that slowly builds. And now a very simple script like that is suddenly applicable to a bunch of other things, and everything starts to mesh together. And you can, the growth is fast once you get over the initial difficulties, I think.
Exactly. And I think people like have like, I think the feeling that it's very difficult, and it is, I think, not that difficult as most people expect. So when you start with it, it's like, okay, that it's quite logic. I mean, we're engineers, we're used to logic, we're used to calculations. I can imagine that someone that is like not technical, they gonna have a hard time, but we're super technical people. That's the
Yeah.
reason why we started engineering. And yeah, you can really do this. And I think what's also interesting is that all companies, mostly of at least larger companies, they have like a budget for personal development, and you can ask that too to your HR department, of to your manager, and say, hey, I really think the company will benefit if we will have more expertise in automation. Where can I find a budget? How does it work? And I think some people are not aware of that, but you can do that. It's there for you to learn, and you can use those budgets to get better too.
Yeah,
And I
that's a
think your
great
manager
point.
will be happy. Yeah.
That's a great point. And one other, it's almost like just a paradox of the industry is, a lot of engineering companies, especially consultancies, charge by the hourly rate. And if I
True.
tell you I can design, it'll take me 1,000 hours to design a bridge, and then Anand comes in and he says, I can design this bridge in 15 minutes, then the hourly rate, it's like, well, Anand will pay you, 50 euros. and then this other guy charges 1,000 hours. So there's a paradox between charging by the hour and the efficiency and the production of work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a weird discrepancy in the industry that's like it's slowly starting to shift towards value,
Yeah.
but it's still not clear to me exactly how you can explain the benefit. The way I explain it is if we can automate and accelerate design, it leaves more time for quality control and the production of quality deliverables. Because that's
Yeah.
usually where the time is lost in the minutia of creating clean reports and drawings. That's where the time is lost. And I feel like automation tools can give you back a lot more time for the client facing deliverables. What do you think about that?
Agree totally. So I think that when I see like what's the impact of automation on engineers is at the end that they spend less time in boring stuff like updating models, updating the reports, living there more time to really think about the design, make better decisions. So I think if you will have person A with zero automation experience and he will invest 100 hours in a design, you will get a design. But if you have the same person investing 100 hours in the design, which knows how to automate the work, you will get a much, much better design. And that will mean less materials, less risk. Maybe if you have to change something last minute, you will still make it on time. And that has a lot of value too. And I think clients are also seeing that. And they are like, when they get a proposal where it's clear that you will have some kind of automation tool and you could explain what the benefits of this, they also understand that because, of course, they have experienced delays in projects. They have experienced like, okay, design choices they don't really like, but due to time, there's no alternative. And sometimes, yeah, when you don't have the means to adapt quickly to changes, then you have to cut corners. And that results basically in a suboptimal design and a too heavy design of something you didn't really like. But yeah, you have
Yeah,
to accept it.
yeah, you
Yeah.
do. Okay, let's talk about a couple of other important aspects of Victor, and one is security and privacy of client data. How do you guys manage all of that stuff?
Yeah, so the question we get quite often is, hey, I make an app. Who's the owner of the app? Well, you as a client are the owner of the app, 100%. We cannot access the code of your apps, so we cannot see anything. And of course, besides that, we have very high security standards regarding access and everything. And I think security is higher when you have apps than when you have scripts. Because what I hear a lot, for example, some clients tell me, we have a bunch of Excel sheets which we have invested a lot of time to write, and then you have like contractors that stay like a month or two, and they take all the Excel sheets home. You have no control. So if those files are on the server, you have zero control on what's happening with them. So I think this is a very safe alternative to really keeping the quality control of your tools. So, for example, making sure that everyone uses the right version. So I can remember a case when quite some time ago, we were building a bridge and we had this Excel sheet, and then we were kind of in a hurry. So my colleagues started helping me, and we started kind of having at the end, two Excel sheets which were a bit different from each other, and then things didn't match and we were not able to understand. We spent so much time to just figuring out what we had changed in those Excel sheets and why it was giving different results. And when you have like a centralized system, then you're sure that everyone is using the latest, greatest version without bugs and all of that. So I think there's a lot of improvement and reducing risk of using the wrong data and tools. There's a lot of security in that your IP is secure. And of course, as a platform, we integrate with single sign-on and all the highest IT standards. So when an employee leaves, it gets deleted automatically and all that kind of stuff that you need to be partner of like really big companies as we are. And we are also like ISO certified for security. So we have very high standards on this.
Cool. And I guess leading on to that, Victor has a cloud storage platform. So if I'm creating an app that requires specific data, it's uploaded onto Victor's cloud, or do I can I also use that data locally on my machine? What way does that work?
So one of the things we do is we do the whole hosting, because at the moment you as an engineer have to think about the hosting, then we miss our goal that it's making it easy. So if you have to take care of the hosting, then it becomes complicated automatically.
Yeah.
So we do everything for you regarding hosting and databases, security, and access. So you can focus on really thinking about, hey, what's the proper way of calculating a bridge, basically. So yeah, all your data is on the cloud, but it's very secure. So it's in a very secure location. It's redundant. We also comply with like, for example, we have international clients that work on different regions, and by law they are obliged to have the data for government projects on their territory. We enable that too, so you can have that. If you're in Australia and the UK, you can have that data in Australia and UK, but it's still accessible for a colleague in another part. But then you comply with the legal requirements, for example.
Cool. And my understanding then is, if if I'm creating an app for a floor slab or whatever, I can open up my IDE, VS Code, PyCharm, whatever I like to use. Then I run a CLI command, which then connects Viktor to the online platform, which opens up in your browser. And now you have a kind of, as you write your code, you can visually connect and see what you're doing and how it changes in real time, which I think is cool.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. So it's writing Python as you're used, and you write a small command in the terminal, and then the web app that's online, it's connected to your code editor. And at the moment you change lines of code, you see that app updating automatically. And then when you're happy, you can publish it and share it with people and ask them feedback, because that's also a very important part in creating apps, is getting feedback from people so you can improve, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then just quickly, one other question I have on it is, you've got source control and repositories and forking and all of that kind of stuff on platforms like GitHub or GitLab. Does Viktor do anything like that, or is each app its own sort of self-contained project? How is version management or collaboration handled for Viktor apps?
You have two sides of the story, not you have the side for the user, and you have the side for the person that created the app. So the person that created the app, depending on if you create those apps locally or on code spaces on GitHub, you have basically the code locally. That's the simplest version. You can have it on a hard drive. Of course, if you are going into a more serious project, we don't recommend that. We recommend using GitLab or GitHub to do all the code control, to work with your colleagues and revision, as it's like the standard when developing software. So all of that is possible in combination with Viktor. So we enable you to create a continuous integration and development pipeline with all the automatic checks and everything in it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's thing people that are more advanced in the topic do, of course. And if not, you can just have the files locally and work on that and keep your pace. And from the user side, apps have a database. Maybe I can show that too. I think that's easier. And
yeah,
if you give me a second. The app has a database which is made automatically for you, where you can store designs of your apps. So in this case, you don't. I just entered an app, and you don't see like the part where you change your design, but what you see is a folder.
Mm-hmm.
And in that folder, you could have, for example, different projects, and inside each project, you could have different designs, and that comes out of the shell. So you basically just have to put in one line, I want a database, and this is the way you want it, and you get it. what's nice is that, for example, in this case, it's like a simple bridge configurator, which is connected to SIA, which is a finite element software.
Mhm.
So if I will change something here, for example, for the user, and say, hey, I changed the length of the deck, and I save it, and say, just a comment, hey, bridge 3 meter.
Yeah.
Get saved, and you can also see the history of changes. So in this case, someone, my colleague Karina made the bridge for the first time, and now I'm Jan. This is me, Yandu. It's the name to create also the tutorials. I change something and I save it, and in that way you have like a full track of all changes made, and I can also go back. So what was different? I changed it from 100 to 3. And I can also choose to basically say, no, I don't want that version. I want Karina's version. And then you get Karina's version back. And I can also go to my version again, for example. So
Nice.
data. And that's all of the shell. So that's the nice thing, you know. You have a lot of like extra functionalities that you will probably not be able to make by your own that are ready for you in these apps.
Cool. Okay. This is the big question, Anand.
Big one.
What is Viktor's pricing model? How, what's the revenue strategy for Viktor? Because I'm just one guy, but I see this as a very useful and appealing tool for many engineers who will struggle to explain the benefits to the guys that sign on the spending. So the bottom line is, how I see this is, if you can go to your manager or your company owner and show a use case of how these apps can benefit your company, then you can make a good argument. So I know that there's a very generous free tier, and then I know that you provide more commercial services. So can you just outline that and how that works?
Yeah, I will do. But before doing that, I was triggered by something you said, not that you have to basically sell to your manager that you want to make a tool. And yeah, I will say a little piece of advice there is talk their language. And what's the language that managers talk? It's time, risk. So when you have something in your mind and say, hey, let's say I want to automate that, make a small business plan to say somehow and see, okay, how much time a day of a week I'm spending in this part, how much time will save, how often do I do that? Colleagues are doing the same, and do that calculation and basically come to your manager, say, hey, I think if we make this tool, it will take me maybe 3 weeks, but I will save 500 hours in 2 years. And that's a whole different discussion to have to your manager than saying, hey, I have automation tool to automatically generate the nodes and my finite element model. And maybe he doesn't even know what a finite element model is. Hopefully he does. But it's you really need to explain this in terms they understand, so they get the benefits, you know. So you reduce risk. I will be able to make quotation quicker. So at the moment there are too many clients waiting for my quotations. This is too slow, and really explain it that way to people. And I think that will help you make your case. And coming back to your question about the pricing, yes, we have free version. It's free forever, so it's not a free trial. And the logic behind it is that if you want to make an app and share that with the world, so an app that's public, then we want to support you in that, because it's also like in what we believe, that engineers should share knowledge more. And that's our way to supporting you in doing that. So we will pay the hosting. You can use it for free forever. And you have basically the full functionality of creating apps. Now, companies mostly, not always want to have public apps. They want to have it like for their own team, behind the login screen. And that's like the system I show, like this internal app store.
Yep.
And for that, there is a price. yeah, that price it's depends a lot, you know. So we have companies with 3 people, and we have companies with 50,000 employees, and of course the price it's not the same for both cases. So it depends a lot on yeah, how many people you expect to have there, and how intensive your calculations are, how many regions you want to open, like how many servers in different places.
Hmm.
So there's like a discussion that needs to take place with the one going about the budget. So the digital leader, of the manager, of the head division, of the head of our division, in which we talk together about what the plans are, what their ambitions are, and based on that we calculate the price for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And over the last few years, I'm sure you guys have noticed accelerated growth in interest in this area. Um, what has been the growth trajectory of Viktor over, say, the last 5 years?
Yeah, it's going quite fast. So let's say we are about duplicating each year in the amount of users. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And if I look like maybe we're a Dutch company, so we're based in the Netherlands, and maybe 4 or 5 years ago we were mostly having Dutch companies. Then we kind of there's a consortium here in the Netherlands of the 8 biggest contractors, which joined to make tools on Viktor, and a bit before Corona, we really started going international, and now we are an international company with clients all around the globe. So we have Jacobs as a client, KBR, City Constructions. So basically, all the big players are using Viktor, and yeah, we see that as growth too, like the size of the company,
awesome.
line
Okay.
of where we are. Yeah.
So I guess before we close off, as I said, there is, and Anand said it too, is there's fantastic learning materials on the Viktor website. And if you're interested in this, you can go there and, treat it like a playground and create whatever you want. There's just so many options. So do you have some advice, Anand, to people that are starting off learning Python or just trying to figure out how and where it fits in? Like, if you could go back and give yourself advice when you were starting, what would you say? What kind of stuff did you focus on that was nonsense? Because I've definitely done a lot of that.
Well, VBA. but but yeah, talking about Python, I think that the most important is that you get value of it. So don't start learning stuff just to learn stuff. I think that's not the right way. I think reflect to what you're doing today and challenge yourself to improve that using Python, and then you will find the right solutions in Google, in the trainings you give James, of and the trainings we have. There's a lot to learn there. That's the great thing. But try to make it applied to your situation, because then you will also have more incentive to keep learning that. And it's kind of the same example you provided from the pictures. Not you kind of hacked something in and then it worked, and then you improve it, and then you start. It's a very natural process, and you have to push yourself to really say, okay, now I'm not going to update that again by hand. Now I'm
Yeah,
just spending the whole day trying to automate that, but it will pay back,
yeah,
and do it.
yeah, absolutely. And there's like a level of proficiency at Microsoft Excel, and when you begin learning to code, your coding proficiency is down here, and you keep looking up there. But eventually, as you progress, once you reach a parity and you begin to exceed with your ability to code, you will never look back to using Excel. I mean, sometimes it's useful if you want to create a table, but I think that's probably the only use case I have for it. All of my calculations and all of my processes, a lot of my engineering design now, for I work mainly in hydropower and energy, and it's all in Python. So, Anand, thank you so much for your time today. Awesome discussion. Victor's a fascinating platform. I plan to dig into it a little bit more myself personally, and I'll provide some updates to the Flocode listeners. And I hope that we can have you back on here again to talk
We'd
about
love
stuff in
to.
the future.
Yeah, it would be great. And thanks for having me here. And thanks everyone for listening.
Sweet. Thanks, Anand.